My name is Rochelle, and at 67 years old, I thought I had seen it all until my son Michael got married last spring. The beautiful Manhattan apartment that my late husband Frank and I had worked so hard for became the target of my new daughter-in-law, Amanda. I had my suspicions about her from the beginning, but nothing prepared me for what happened at their wedding reception. In front of 130 guests, she demanded my house keys, and when I refused, she did something that changed everything. Let me know where you are watching from in the comments below, and hit that subscribe button if you want to hear how a mother of the groom ended up filing assault charges on her son's wedding day. I met my husband Frank during college in the late 70s. We were young, ambitious, and completely in love. After graduation, I pursued my dream of becoming a teacher while Frank went to law school. We married in a simple ceremony with just close family and friends, nothing like the extravagant affair that would become my son's wedding decades later. Frank and I were married for 30 wonderful years, before cancer took him from me 10 years ago. We had our struggles like any couple, but we built a beautiful life together. Our greatest accomplishment was our son Michael, who became the center of our world from the moment he was born. The apartment that would eventually become such a point of contention between me and my daughter-in-law has been my home for over 40 years. Frank and I purchased it in the early 80s when the neighborhood was still up and coming. It was a stretch for us financially back then, with Frank just starting his career at a law firm and me teaching elementary school, but we believed in the investment. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a small balcony with a partial view of Central Park. Nothing extraordinary by today's Manhattan standards, but it was our dream home, and over the years, as the neighborhood transformed into one of the most desirable in the city, the property value increased beyond anything we could have imagined. While Frank built his career as an attorney, eventually becoming a partner at his firm, I dedicated myself to teaching 3rd grade at a public school just 6 blocks from our apartment. I loved being able to walk to work, and it allowed me to be home quickly for Michael after school. We were fortunate to afford a comfortable life, but we always lived modestly, saving for Michael's education and our retirement. After Frank passed away from pancreatic cancer, Michael and I grew even closer. He was 27 at the time, already established in his career as a software engineer, but the loss of his father hit him hard. We started a tradition of Sunday dinners at my apartment where I would cook Frank's favorite recipes and Michael would share stories about his week. We also began traveling together once a year, just the 2 of us exploring places Frank and I had always planned to visit. These trips became sacred to me, a way to maintain our bond while honoring Frank's memory. Michael had several serious relationships before Amanda, all with lovely, down-to-earth women who seemed to appreciate our close relationship. There was Jessica, his college girlfriend, who became like a daughter to me during their 5 years together. Then came Danielle, a fellow software engineer who shared Michael's passion for hiking and the outdoors. When they broke up after 2 years, I was almost as heartbroken as Michael. There was never any tension between me and his previous girlfriends, which is why what happened with Amanda was so shocking. I first met Amanda at a dinner Michael arranged at an upscale restaurant in Tribeca. She was undeniably beautiful, with perfectly styled blonde hair, designer clothes, and an engaging smile. Throughout dinner, she charmed us with stories of her work in luxury real estate and asked thoughtful questions about Michael's childhood. I noticed, however, that many of her questions centered around our family assets. She seemed particularly interested in how long I had owned my apartment, its size, and whether it was fully paid off. At the time, I dismissed my discomfort as overprotectiveness. Michael seemed happier than I had seen him in years, laughing at all of Amanda's jokes and holding her hand across the table. I wanted to be supportive and open-minded, especially since Michael had been single for nearly 2 years before meeting her. Over the next few months, as their relationship progressed, Amanda began making subtle comments about my apartment whenever she visited. She would remark on the wasted space since I lived alone, or how the layout could be improved with some modern renovations. Once, while looking through family photos in the living room, she said, "I bet this place is worth a fortune now. You could sell it and buy something half the size for the same money. Think of all the cash you would have left over." I noticed changes in Michael, too. He had always been pragmatic about money, saving diligently, but never obsessing over material things. With Amanda, He suddenly became concerned with status symbols. He traded his practical Honda for a BMW, started wearing expensive watches, and talked about vacations to exclusive resorts I knew he could barely afford. Amanda constantly pointed out luxury items in magazines or store windows when we were together. "Did you see that chandelier, Michael? Something like that would look amazing in a pre-war apartment with high ceilings." Or, "That kitchen reminds me of what we could do with your mother's outdated space." The first time Amanda directly suggested I should downsize was about 6 months into their relationship. We were having dinner at a new restaurant. Michael wanted to try much fancier than our usual spots. Amanda mentioned her client, a woman in her 70s who had moved to a retirement community in Florida, selling her Manhattan apartment to her son and his wife. She was so happy to give her son the opportunity to raise his family in the home where he grew up, Amanda said, looking pointedly at me. Plus, she got a beautiful condo with no maintenance worries and a swimming pool. I think more parents should consider doing that. It just makes sense, right, Michael? Michael looked uncomfortable but nodded slightly. I changed the subject, but the comment stayed with me. Still, I tried to dismiss my concerns. Maybe I was being too sensitive or reading too much into innocent remarks. Michael was happy, and I wanted to support his relationship. Things came to a head at a dinner in my apartment about 7 months into their relationship. Amanda asked to use the bathroom but was gone for nearly 20 minutes. When she returned, she had a strange smile on her face. "This place has so much potential," she said. "I was just thinking about what we could do with it. The master bedroom would need a complete overhaul, but with the right designer, it could be spectacular." She proceeded to outline detailed renovation plans for my apartment, speaking as if its future was already decided. Michael looked increasingly uncomfortable but said nothing to stop her. When I gently reminded her that I had no plans to renovate or move, she laughed it off. "Oh, I'm just dreaming out loud, Rochelle. But you know, at your age, do you really need all this space? Wouldn't you rather have something easier to manage?" That night after they left, I sat alone in my living room looking at the photos of Frank and me throughout our years in this home. For the first time, I felt a genuine sense of unease about Michael's relationship with Amanda and wondered what exactly I had missed. Just 8 months after Michael and Amanda started dating, he called me on a Tuesday evening with news that left me speechless. "Mom, I proposed to Amanda last night, and she said yes. We are engaged." The speed of their relationship milestone left me stunned. Michael had always been methodical and patient, taking years before considering engagement in his previous relationships. Yet here he was planning to marry a woman he had known for less than a year. I swallowed my concerns and congratulated him, promising to take them both out for a celebratory dinner that weekend. Privately, I called my best friend Susan to voice my worries. 8 months seems so fast, Susan, and there is something about her that just doesn't feel right, I confessed. Susan, always the voice of reason after 40 years of friendship, reminded me that expressing my doubts would only push Michael away. "Give her a chance, Rochelle. For Michael's sake," she advised. Taking her words to heart, I threw myself into welcoming Amanda to our family. I hosted an engagement dinner at my apartment, inviting the few relatives Michael and I had left, plus close friends who had known him since childhood. I presented Amanda with a pearl necklace that had belonged to Frank's mother, explaining its sentimental value and family history. She smiled politely, but I noticed the necklace never made an appearance again after that evening. Wedding planning began immediately, with Amanda taking complete control of every detail. What I initially imagined would be a meaningful, medium-sized celebration quickly transformed into an extravagant affair at one of Manhattan's most expensive hotels. The guest list expanded to over 150 people, many of whom Michael barely knew. Colleagues of Amanda's parents, her extended network of real estate professionals and society acquaintances, she was eager to impress. When I expressed concern about the mounting costs offering to contribute from my savings, Amanda brushed me off with a wave of her hand. "We want it to be perfect, Rochelle. Michael and I are only getting married once." I suggested incorporating some of our family traditions into the ceremony, the same readings that had been part of my wedding to Frank, a special musical piece that had been played at family weddings for generations. Amanda dismissed each idea. "Those traditions are so dated, Rochelle. "We want our wedding to be fresh and Instagram-worthy," she explained, as if social media approval was the primary purpose of their union. The bridal shower, organized by Amanda's maid of honor, was held at an exclusive women's club on the Upper East Side. I brought a carefully wrapped gift containing a diamond bracelet that Frank had given me on our 10th anniversary. It was one of my most treasured possessions, but I wanted Michael's bride to have something meaningful from our family. When Amanda opened it, a flash of disappointment crossed her face before she composed herself. "Oh, vintage jewelry. How sweet," she said quickly, setting it aside to move on to the next gift designer homeware from her registry at Bloomingdale's. Throughout the shower, I noticed how Amanda's parents, particularly her mother Gloria, encouraged her expensive tastes. They had contributed only a token amount to the wedding itself, explaining that they were saving for a generous cash gift instead, yet Gloria constantly pushed for more elaborate details. "You deserve the absolute best day, sweetheart," Gloria cooed when Amanda described the $1,000 cake she had ordered. "Michael's mother can help with some of these expenses, I'm sure. After all, she's just supporting herself now." The comment stung, implying that my primary value was financial support for their daughter's extravagance. But I remained silent, not wanting to create tension. Later that day, while retrieving my coat from the bedroom where they had been stored, I overheard Amanda speaking with a friend in the adjoining bathroom. The door was slightly ajar, and Amanda's voice carried clearly. "The apartment is going to be ours soon enough," she was saying. "It needs a lot of work, but the location is incredible. Michael's mom can't possibly need 3 bedrooms at her age. We're just waiting for the right moment to bring it up." My heart raced as I quietly retrieved my coat and slipped away. That evening, I tried to discuss my concerns with Michael during one of our increasingly rare moments alone. "Honey, I know the wedding planning is stressful, but I feel like Amanda might have some expectations about my apartment that we haven't discussed," I began carefully. Michael immediately became defensive. "Mom, don't start this again. Amanda isn't after your apartment. She's just excited about our future together. Can't you just be happy for us without looking for problems?" His reaction only deepened my worry. Again, I hadn't brought up concerns about my apartment before, which meant Amanda had been discussing it with him privately. Still, I backed down, not wanting to damage our relationship further. As the wedding date approached, I confided more frequently in Susan, who had noticed the changes in Michael as well. "He barely calls you anymore except about wedding details, and you've always been so close," she observed during one of our lunch dates. "Have you considered talking to your brother about this?" William, my brother, and a retired judge, lived in Boston and had met Amanda only once during a brief visit. He had seemed unimpressed, but kept his observations to himself out of respect for Michael. "I don't want to involve William yet," I told Susan. "Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe after the wedding things will settle down and Amanda will relax." The rehearsal dinner, which I had offered to host as tradition dictated, was taken over by Amanda and held at an exclusive restaurant I could never have afforded. When I arrived, I discovered I had been seated at the furthest table from the wedding party with distant relatives and colleagues I barely knew. Michael came over briefly to kiss my cheek, noticing my hurt expression. "I'm sorry, Mom. Amanda just thought it would be easier with the speeches and everything if family was spread out to host different tables," he explained weakly. "It's fine, honey," I assured him, though we both knew it wasn't. I didn't want to spoil his night by pointing out that Amanda's parents were seated prominently at the main table. Later, as Michael walked me to my car, he squeezed my hand. "She's just stressed about the big day, Mom. She wants everything to be perfect. You know how brides can get." I nodded, remembering my own simple, joy-filled wedding day with Frank, where the last thing on my mind had been perfection or status, or whether my centerpieces would impress strangers. What I remembered most was the love in Frank's eyes, as we promised ourselves to each other, and the warmth of family surrounding us. I wondered if Michael would have those same precious memories, or if his wedding day would be overshadowed by performances and appearances. As I drove home that night, I prayed that my instincts about Amanda were wrong, that after the wedding excitement faded, she would reveal herself to be a loving, genuine partner for my son. But a nagging voice inside me warned that the worst was yet to come. On the morning of Michael's wedding, I woke early, and sat at my vanity studying my reflection as I prepared for the day ahead. At 67, my face showed the maps of a life well-lived, lines from decades of laughter with frank furrows from the grief of losing him and the gentle softening that comes with age. I applied my makeup carefully, wanting to look my best for the photographs that would memorialize this milestone. As I styled my silver hair, I found myself reminiscing about Michael's childhood milestones. His first steps taken right in the living room, his high school graduation, where Frank had been so proudly videotaping that he nearly missed Michael crossing the stage the day we dropped him off at college, all three of us trying not to cry. Now, my little boy was getting married, and instead of pure joy, my heart was heavy with worries I couldn't share with him. The wedding was scheduled for 4 p.m. at the Grand Plaza Hotel, with photos beginning at 1. Although the invitation indicated the mother of the groom should arrive at noon to be included in the family photos, I decided to arrive at 11, hoping to make myself useful and perhaps find a moment alone with Michael before the Ronesse festivities began. When I entered the hotel's luxurious bridal suite, I found it bustling with activity. Hairstylists, makeup artists, photographers, and various members of the bridal party filled the space. Amanda sat in the center like a queen holding court, her blonde hair partially pinned up, while a stylist worked on the rest. Her mother, Gloria, immediately spotted me and rushed over. "Rochelle, you're early," she noted with a tight smile. "The mother of the groom photos won't start until after 1, and Amanda needs complete focus right now. Perhaps you could wait in the hotel restaurant." I smiled politely. I thought I might help with anything that needs doing. "Are the boutonnieres being delivered to the groomsmen's room? I could take them over." Gloria patted my arm condescendingly. "Everything's under control. The wedding planner has it all handled. Just find a spot to sit until you're needed." I glanced toward Amanda, who caught my eye briefly in the mirror before turning her attention back to her reflection. No acknowledgement, no warm smile for the mother of her groom. I retreated from the suite, feeling distinctly unwelcome. I spent the next hour wandering the hotel, eventually finding Michael and his groomsmen in a smaller suite, several floors below. My son's face lit up when he saw me, and he broke away from his friends to embrace me. "Mom, you look beautiful," he said, holding me at arm's length to admire my pale blue dress and jacket. For a moment, I saw my little boy in his eyes, and my heart swelled with love. "Are you ready for the big day?" I asked, straightening his tie, though it didn't need it. A shadow crossed his features. "Yeah, mostly. It's just been so stressful, you know. Amanda wants everything perfect." I nodded, searching for the right words that would support him without revealing my concerns. "Marriage isn't about a perfect wedding day, honey. It's about facing life's imperfections together with love and respect." Michael's eyes met mine, and I sensed he wanted to say something more, but one of his groomsmen called him over for a photo, and the moment passed. The ceremony itself was aesthetically flawless if emotionally cold. The hotel ballroom had been transformed into a white and gold fantasy with thousands of roses, crystal chandeliers, and a custom aisle runner embroidered with Michael and Amanda's initials. As mother of the groom, I was escorted to my seat in the front row by a wedding planner who had to check her clipboard to confirm my name. Watching Michael stand at the altar, handsome in his tuxedo, I felt a complex mixture of pride and apprehension. When Amanda appeared at the end of the aisle, there was an audible gasp from the guests. Her gown was a masterpiece of design, clearly costing more than most people's entire weddings. Michael's face, as he watched her approach, showed genuine love and awe, which gave me a moment of hope. Perhaps he truly did see something in her that I had missed. The ceremony proceeded with theatrical precision, rather than authentic emotion. The vows were generic, the readings selected for their popularity on wedding websites rather than personal meaning, and the kiss at the end seemed performed for the photographers rather than as a genuine expression of love. Still, as Michael and Amanda were pronounced husband and wife, I clapped and smiled, determined to support my son's choice. After the ceremony, during the brief receiving line, Michael hugged me tightly. "I love you, Mom," he whispered in my ear. "Thank you for everything." For that brief moment, I felt our connection reignite, and tears sprang to my eyes. "I love you too, sweetheart. More than you'll ever know." The moment was shattered when Amanda appeared looping her arm through Michael's possessively. "We need you for photos," she announced, pulling him away, without acknowledging me further. During the cocktail hour, I was introduced repeatedly as simply Michael's mom, my name apparently not important enough to mention. I smiled politely, making small talk with guests who seemed surprised by my treatment. "This is your only son's wedding?" one of Michael's colleagues asked incredulously after witnessing Amanda brush past me without acknowledgement. "Yes, just Michael. He and his father were very close before Frank passed," I replied, trying to keep the conversation positive. Amanda made her entrance to the reception, like royalty having changed into a second designer gown. The MC announced them as Mr. and Mrs. Michael Bradford, and they proceeded to a choreographed first dance that Michael had clearly been practicing for months. As I watched my formerly rhythm-challenged son execute perfect turns and dips, I wondered how many hours Amanda had made him rehearse and whether he had enjoyed any of it. When it came time to be seated for dinner, I discovered I had been placed not at the family table, but at a table with Michael's work colleagues, none of whom I knew well. Amanda's extended family, including second cousins and her parents' friends, occupied the prime tables near the head table. "Is this right?" I asked the wedding planner, showing her my place card. "Yes, Mrs. Bradford." The bride arranged the seating chart personally, she confirmed before hurrying away. Across the table, a kind-looking woman introduced herself as Patricia, one of Michael's team leads. I couldn't help noticing her sympathetic expression. Throughout dinner, Patricia and her husband made efforts to include me in conversation, asking thoughtful questions about Michael's childhood and my teaching career. During the meal, I overheard a conversation from the next table, where several of Amanda's friends were seated. A young woman with an expensive-looking haircut was speaking animatedly. "Amanda says the apartment has the most amazing pre-war details and a partial park view. They're going to gut renovate it as soon as the old lady moves out. I think they're helping her find a retirement place or something." I nearly choked on my water, setting the glass down with a shaking hand. Patricia noticed my distress. "Are you all right, Mrs. Bradford?" she asked quietly. "Yes, thank you. Just went down the wrong way. I managed, though my mind was racing." As the evening progressed, my anxiety grew. There had been no discussion of my moving, no agreement about my apartment. Yet Amanda was clearly telling people it was a done deal. I tried to focus on the celebration to remember that this was Michael's special day, but the overhead conversation had shaken me deeply. The wedding coordinator, a sleek young woman with a perpetually harried expression, treated me with the same distant politeness she showed to any guest, despite my role as mother of the groom. When I asked if there was a schedule for the parent dances, she looked confused. "Oh, the bride decided to skip the mother-son dance. Didn't anyone tell you?" She felt it would slow down the reception's energy. "Another tradition? Another connection to Michael casually discarded." I nodded and returned to my table, watching as Amanda's father twirled her around the dance floor in a carefully choreographed routine that had clearly been professionally arranged. Michael stood at the edge of the dance floor, clapping along occasionally, glancing at me with an apologetic expression. As I sat watching the celebration unfold, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong, that this elaborate performance had little to do with love or family or building a life together. It was as if Amanda was staging a production with Michael as her co-star and me as an increasingly unnecessary extra. Little did I know that the real drama was yet to unfold. The wedding dinner was in full swing, the 5-course meal being served with practiced precision by the hotel staff. At my table, conversation had settled into comfortable small talk about the ceremony and Michael's work accomplishments. I was just finishing my main course when I saw Michael and Amanda approaching our table. My heart lifted, hoping that my son had noticed my isolation and was coming to spend some time with me. Amanda was smiling, her camera ready, her arm linked through Michael's as they stopped beside my chair. She looked radiant in her reception gown, a crystal tiara nested in her blonde updo. Michael's expression was harder to read, a mixture of happiness and something else, something that looked almost like nervousness. "How's everything going over here?" Amanda asked the table. Generally, though, her eyes were fixed on me. "Is everyone enjoying the celebration?" There were murmurs of appreciation from around the table. Compliments on the food, the decor, the music. I smiled up at my son and his new wife. "Everything is beautiful, Michael. You must be having a wonderful time," I said, directing my comment to him specifically. Before he could answer, Amanda jumped in. "We are. But it's been so hectic with all the photos and greeting everyone." She laughed lightly. "I feel like we've barely had a moment to breathe, right, honey?" Michael nodded, glancing briefly at me before looking back at Amanda. "Yeah, it's been non-stop." I noticed that a few guests at nearby tables had turned to watch our interaction, perhaps hoping to congratulate the couple. Amanda seemed aware of the audience, her posture straightening slightly as more eyes turned our way. "Speaking of non-stop," Amanda continued, suddenly shifting topics. "We should talk about those moving plans, Rochelle." "Moving plans?" I repeated, genuinely confused. Amanda's smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened slightly. "Yes, you know what we discussed about the apartment. The movers are coming tomorrow morning." My bewilderment must have shown on my face, because several people at the table looked between us with growing discomfort. I had never discussed any moving plans, had never agreed to give up my home of 40 years, especially not with movers arriving the very next day. Michael shifted his weight from one foot to another, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Amanda, maybe we should discuss this later," he said quietly. Amanda ignored him, her focus entirely on me, her voice still pleasant, but with an edge that hadn't been there before. "We'll need your keys tonight, actually. The moving company is coming at 9, and we want to get everything sorted before the honeymoon. You remember we talked about this, right, Rochelle?" The table had gone silent now, all pretense of private conversation abandoned, as my son's colleagues watched this strange exchange unfold. I looked directly at Michael, whose eyes now avoided mine. "Michael, I never agreed to move out of my apartment. I don't know what Amanda has told you, but there have been no such discussions," I said firmly, but quietly trying to contain the situation. Amanda's pleasant mask slipped slightly, her mouth tightening at the corners. "Now, Rochelle, don't be difficult. You promised the apartment as our wedding present. We've already scheduled everything." Several gasps came from around the table, and I noticed that guests from nearby tables were now openly watching and listening. The absurdity of the claim that I would give away my home as a wedding present left me momentarily speechless. I found my voice. "Amanda, I made no such promise. My apartment is my home, not a wedding gift. I have no plans to move, certainly not tomorrow morning." Amanda's face flushed slightly, her voice rising. "Michael deserves his inheritance now, while you're still alive to see him enjoy it. Why would you need a 3-bedroom apartment at your age? It's selfish, really." The word selfish struck me like a physical blow. I had dedicated my life to my family, to my students, to supporting others. Never had anyone accused me of selfishness, least of all regarding my son. "Inheritance," I repeated, looking between Amanda and Michael. "My apartment isn't an inheritance yet, it's my home. The home I shared with Michael's father, the home where I raised my son." By now the confrontation had drawn attention from across the reception. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Amanda's mother, Gloria, hurrying toward us, her expression alarmed. Servers had paused in their duties, hovering uncertainly at the edges of the growing scene. Michael finally spoke, his voice low. "Mom," I thought. "Amanda said you had discussed this." "I never discussed giving up my apartment, Michael. Not once." I looked at my son, trying to understand how he could have believed such a thing. "Whoever told you otherwise wasn't telling the truth." Amanda's composure cracked entirely. "Are you calling me a liar? At my own wedding?" The reception had grown eerily quiet, the music still playing, but conversations dying away as more and more guests turned to watch the unfolding drama. I became acutely aware that over 100 people were witnessing this confrontation. I stood up slowly, wanting to be on equal footing with Amanda. I kept my voice calm and even. "I'm saying there has been a misunderstanding. I have never agreed to give you my apartment, and I have no intention of moving tomorrow or any time soon. This is not the time or place for this discussion." Amanda stepped closer to me, her voice now carrying clearly across the silent reception hall. "You promised. You're just a selfish old woman who can't stand to see her son happy. Give me the keys now." From the corner of my eye, I saw Michael reach for Amanda's arm, trying to calm her, but she shook him off. Her face was contorted with rage, now all pretense of the perfect bride abandoned. "The apartment is my home," I repeated firmly, standing my ground despite my racing heart. "I will not be giving you my keys tonight or tomorrow. I suggest we all calm down and enjoy the rest of the reception." What happened next occurred so quickly that I barely had time to react. Amanda's hand shot out in a blur of white satin and diamond rings, connecting with my cheek with such force that my head snapped to the side. My glasses flew off, clattering across the table and onto the floor. The sound of the slap echoed through the ballroom, followed by collective gasps and cries of shock. For a moment, I stood frozen, my hand rising to my stinging cheek, unable to fully process that my new daughter-in-law had just physically assaulted me in front of a room full of witnesses. Without my glasses, the reception blurred around me, faces becoming indistinct smudges of color. The pain was sharp, but the public humiliation and the realization of who Amanda truly was cut much deeper. The silence that followed was deafening. Servers stood with trays suspended in midair. The DJ had cut the music. Even the photographers had lowered their cameras, apparently unsure whether to document this moment of family dysfunction. I looked toward the blur that was my son, waiting for him to defend me, to say something, anything. When he finally spoke, his words crushed the last of my hopes. "Let's all just calm down," Michael said, his voice strained. "This isn't the time or place." "Not. How dare you hit my mother?" "Not. I'm sorry, Mom. Just a weak plea to smooth over the situation, to pretend nothing had happened." In that moment, I realized how completely I had lost my son to this woman, how thoroughly she had erased the kind, thoughtful man I had raised. The Michael I knew would never have stood by silently while anyone, let alone his wife, struck his mother. As the reality of what had just occurred sank in, I knew I could not remain at this celebration that had become a nightmare. Without my glasses, I could barely see, but I had too much dignity to fumble around searching for them. I simply turned and began gathering my purse and wrap, preparing to leave. My cheek throbbed with pain, the imprint of Amanda's hand burning like a brand. I could feel the eyes of 130 strangers fixed on me, witnessing my humiliation. Without my glasses, the world remained a disorienting blur of colors and shapes, adding to my sense of vulnerability. In that moment, standing in the elegant ballroom that had become the scene of my assault, I had never felt more alone. A gentle hand touched my arm and a voice spoke softly near my ear. "Ma'am, I found your glasses." The young server pressed them into my palm, his expression concerned as it came into focus when I put them back on. "Are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" I thanked him quietly, relieved to have my vision restored but mortified by the public spectacle. Around us, the shocked silence had given way to a low murmur of voices, guests discussing what they had just witnessed. Several people at neighboring tables looked at me with undisguised pity, while others seemed uncomfortably fascinated by the real-life drama unfolding before them. Amanda's parents had rushed to the scene, her father attempting to usher curious onlookers back to their tables, while her mother stood beside Amanda, an arm around her shoulders as if she were the victim rather than the aggressor. Gloria was speaking rapidly into her daughter's ear, likely damage control instructions rather than admonishment for her behavior. My son still stood frozen, looking between his new wife and me, with an expression of confused anguish. When our eyes met, I saw shame there, and for a moment I thought he might come to me, might choose to stand by his mother. Instead, he finally spoke, his voice barely carrying across the space between us. "Let's all calm down," he repeated, as if that were a solution to what had just occurred. "Can we just continue with the reception? People are trying to celebrate." His words felt like a second slap. Not an apology, not a defense of his mother who had just been assaulted, but a plea to sweep the incident under the rug for the sake of appearances. In that moment, I didn't recognize the man standing before me. This wasn't the son I had raised, the boy who had stood up to bullies on the playground, the young man who had held my hand at his father's funeral and promised to always take care of me. I made a decision in that moment, one that came from a place of both self-preservation and dignity. I would not remain at an event where I had been physically assaulted, where my son had chosen to look away rather than defend me. I would not pretend that nothing had happened for the sake of saving face. "Excuse me," I said quietly to the server, who still hovered nearby. "I believe I'll be leaving now." As I gathered my things, Amanda's voice cut through the murmurs, loud and accusatory. "See what you've done. You're ruining our wedding. You're just jealous because Michael loves me more than you." I didn't respond, didn't give her the satisfaction of engaging further. With as much grace as I could muster, I began making my way toward the exit. Susan, my dear friend of 4 decades, appeared at my elbow along with Patricia from my dinner table. "Rochelle, let us drive you home," Susan offered, her face tight with anger on my behalf. "I'm perfectly capable of taking myself home," I assured them, though my voice trembled slightly. "But thank you for your concern." "That woman should be arrested," Patricia muttered loud enough for those nearby to hear. "What she did was assault, plain and simple." I squeezed her arm gratefully, but continued toward the door. I needed to be alone, needed space to process what had happened and what it meant for my relationship with my son. The thought of making small talk in a car, even with well-meaning friends, felt unbearable. The walk through the ballroom seemed endless, the path to the door stretching before me like a gauntlet. Whispers followed in my wake, along with expressions of sympathy and shock. I kept my head high, my back straight, calling on every reserve of dignity I possessed. I would not give Amanda the satisfaction of seeing me broken. In the hotel lobby, the wedding planner intercepted me, her professional mask slightly cracked by genuine concern. "Mrs. Bradford, is there anything I can do? Should I call someone for you?" "No, thank you. I just need my car from valet," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. Once inside my car with the door closed against the world, I finally allowed the tears to come. They flowed silently down my cheeks as I sat in the parking garage, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Not just tears of pain or humiliation, but of grief, for the son I seemed to have lost, for the family relationship that might never recover. I drove home in a state of numb disbelief, the Manhattan streets blurring through my tears. Traffic lights changed, pedestrians crossed, life continued around me, while inside, I felt as though something fundamental had shattered. By the time I pulled into my parking garage, my emotional shock had begun to give way to a simmering anger. In my apartment, I stood in the entryway looking at the home Amanda had so callously assumed would be hers, the living room where Michael had taken his first steps, the kitchen where Frank and I had danced on our 30th anniversary, just months before his diagnosis, the study with bookshelves Frank had built by hand. Every corner held memories, stories, pieces of my life with the people I loved. The thought of Amanda sweeping in to renovate it, erasing those memories to create her Instagram perfect showplace, made my blood boil. I went to the bathroom and examined my cheek in the mirror. An angry red mark had formed, where Amanda's hand had connected the outline of her fingers, clearly visible against my pale skin. By morning, I knew it would be a bruise, physical evidence of what I had endured. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I made a difficult call to the one person I knew would understand the gravity of the situation without judgment. "William, it's Rochelle," I said when my brother answered. "I need your help." William's voice immediately sharpened with concern. "What's happened?" I recounted the events of the evening, my voice breaking occasionally, but pushing through to provide all the details. William, a retired judge who had seen plenty of family conflicts during his career, listened without interruption until I had finished. "I'll be there in 3 hours," he said firmly. "Don't answer the door for anyone else. And Rochelle, take photos of your face, document the injury." After hanging up, I did, as he suggested, using my phone to capture images of the red handprint on my cheek. Then I changed out of my mother of the groom dress, hanging it carefully in the closet, though I doubted I would ever want to wear it again. The beautiful blue fabric that I had chosen so carefully now seemed tainted by the day's events. My phone buzzed repeatedly with calls and texts from Michael, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. What could he possibly say that would excuse his inaction? What words could repair the breach of trust I had experienced? I needed time to think, to decide how to move forward. As I moved through the apartment, touching familiar objects like talismans, I found myself drawn to the photos that lined my shelves and walls. Frank and I on our wedding day, Michael's school pictures through the years, the three of us at the Grand Canyon at Christmas gatherings at Michael's college graduation. A visual history of our family, of the love and trust I had believed unshakable. The doorbell rang precisely 30 minutes after my call to William. Looking through the peephole, I saw my brother's familiar face, but he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a woman I didn't recognize her posture, suggesting law enforcement even in civilian clothes. I opened the door, relief flooding through me at the sight of family, of someone who would stand by me without question. William embraced me gently, mindful of my injured cheek, then stepped back to introduce his companion. "Rochelle, this is Detective Maria Martinez. She's a friend, and she's here to help." Detective Martinez's presence surprised me, but William quickly explained. He had called her on his drive into the city, concerned about the assault I had experienced. Though off-duty, she had agreed to come to my apartment to document my injury and take an initial statement. Her kind eyes assessed my face professionally as she introduced herself. "Mrs. Bradford, I understand you were assaulted today," she said, her tone compassionate, but matter-of-fact. "May I take some photographs of your injury for the record?" I nodded, still somewhat in shock that what had begun as my son's wedding day was ending with a police detective in my living room. Detective Martinez used a small camera to take several photos of my cheek, which had now developed a distinct bruise in the shape of a handprint. "Do you want to press charges for assault?" she asked, after completing her documentation. I hesitated, the implications of formally accusing my new daughter-in-law of a crime suddenly very real. William, ever the lawyer even in retirement, stepped in. "Rochelle, what Amanda did was assault. Plain and simple. There were over 100 witnesses. Whether or not you ultimately decide to pursue charges, we should file a police report now, while the evidence is fresh." After careful consideration, I agreed. Detective Martinez took my statement, recording every detail of the confrontation at the reception. The process was exhausting, reliving the humiliation and shock while translating it into the dispassionate language of a police report. By the time we finished, it was nearly 2 in the morning. "Can I get you anything?" Rochelle, William asked after Detective Martinez had left, promising to file the report first thing in the morning. "You should try to get some rest." I shook my head, knowing sleep would be impossible. My phone had continued buzzing throughout the evening with calls and texts from Michael, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. What could he possibly say that would excuse his failure to stand up for me? "We should prepare for tomorrow," I told William instead. "I have a feeling Michael and Amanda won't let this go easily." William nodded grimly. "I've already contacted a security service. They'll have someone here by 8 tomorrow morning, just in case Amanda tries to follow through on her moving plans." The thought that I needed security to protect me from my own son's wife was almost too much to bear. I sank onto the sofa, suddenly overwhelmed by the events of the day. "How did it come to this, William?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Where did I go wrong with Michael?" My brother sat beside me, his expression serious. "You didn't go wrong, Rochelle. Some people are manipulators who know exactly how to isolate their targets from family. Amanda saw Michael as a path to wealth and status. She's been working systematically to separate him from you and anyone else who might see through her facade." We talked long into the night, William helping me see the patterns of manipulation that had been at work since Michael first introduced Amanda. By dawn, I felt more clear-headed, more resolved about how to handle what would inevitably come next. I had just finished making coffee when my phone rang again. Michael's name flashed on the screen. This time I answered. "Mom," Michael's voice sounded desperate. "Are you okay? Why didn't you answer my calls?" "I'm fine, Michael," I replied, keeping my voice even. "But we need to talk, in person." There was a pause. "We're coming over." "We?" I questioned, though. I already knew the answer. "Amanda and I," he clarified. "She wants to apologize." I glanced at William, who had been listening. "Bring her if you must, but I should warn you that my brother is here and I've filed a police report about the assault." Michael's sharp intake of breath was audible. "Mom, that's not necessary. It was just a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding, I repeated incredulously. She slapped me so hard my glasses flew off. Michael. In front of your entire wedding reception. That's not a misunderstanding. That's assault. After a tense silence, Michael agreed to come over within the hour. I used the time to shower and change, wanting to face whatever was coming with as much dignity as possible. William contacted the security service, ensuring a guard would be present in the building lobby when Michael and Amanda arrived. At precisely 9:30, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole I could see Michael and Amanda standing side by side, she in a designer outfit that looked freshly purchased, he in casual clothes with dark circles under his eyes, suggesting a sleepless night. "William, would you get that?" I asked, not wanting to be the one to face them first. My brother opened the door, his imposing presence filling the frame. "Michael, Amanda." He greeted them formally. "Please come in." Amanda breezed past William as if he were a doorman, her eyes taking in my apartment with the calculating gaze of someone mentally redecorating. Despite the circumstances, she still carried herself with the entitled confidence of someone who expected to get her way. Michael followed his expression, a mixture of exhaustion and apprehension. "Mother Amanda wants to say something to you," Michael began awkwardly when we had all gathered in the living room. Amanda stepped forward, a practiced smile on her face that didn't reach her eyes. "Rochelle, I want to apologize for yesterday. Wedding day stress got the best of me, and I reacted poorly. I'm sure we can put this behind us and move forward as family." Her non-apology hung in the air, its insincerity palpable. She hadn't acknowledged the assault, hadn't taken responsibility for her actions, or the false claims about my apartment. Instead, she was suggesting we sweep it all under the rug and pretend nothing had happened. I noticed she was carrying a large portfolio which she now placed on my coffee table. "I brought some renovation plans to show you," she continued, as if we were simply continuing yesterday's conversation without the assault. "I think you'll love what we have planned for the master bathroom. Italian marble throughout." Michael shifted uncomfortably beside her, but remained silent. I looked between them, finally understanding the full extent of the delusion they were operating under. They truly believed I would still give them my home, even after everything that had happened. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts before responding. "Amanda, Michael, I need to be very clear about several things. First, I have never agreed to give you my apartment. It is my home and I have no plans to move. Second, Amanda's behavior yesterday crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. She physically assaulted me in public, and I have filed a police report documenting the attack." Amanda's facade cracked, her eyes flashing with anger. "You're overreacting. It was barely a tap. Tell her, Michael." My son looked torn, caught between his wife's demands and the undeniable reality of what had happened. "Mom, couldn't we just forget about the police report? It was Amanda's special day, and things got heated." William stepped forward. "Michael, there are over 100 witnesses who saw your wife assault your mother. The injury was documented by a detective. This isn't going away with a half-hearted apology." Michael paled, seeming to fully grasp the situation for the first time. "But what about our plans? We already told everyone we're moving into this apartment after the honeymoon." I looked at my son sadly. "Those were your plans, Michael, not mine. I never agreed to them." Amanda's composure dissolved completely. "You selfish bitch!" She spat her true colors, finally showing without reservation. "You promised us this apartment. Michael deserves his inheritance now." William stepped between us protectively. "That's enough, Amanda. One more word like that and you'll be facing additional charges." Michael grabbed Amanda's arm, finally attempting to restrain her, but she shook him off. "This isn't over, Rochelle," she snarled. "You can't keep this place forever." William moved to the sideboard and retrieved a folder. "Actually, there's something else you both should know. After Rochelle first mentioned her concerns about Amanda's intentions, I hired a private investigator to look into her background." Amanda froze, her expression shifting from rage to alarm. "You had no right," she protested. William continued calmly. "The investigator discovered that Amanda has a pattern of targeting wealthy men and isolating them from their families. Before Michael, there was a broken engagement with Thomas Harrington of the Boston Harringtons. She attempted a similar property acquisition with his family's summer home in Cape Cod. Michael looked stunned. "What are you talking about?" William handed him a report from the folder. Amanda Wilson was previously engaged to Thomas Harrington 2 years ago. The engagement ended when his family discovered her attempts to have his grandmother declared incompetent so they could take possession of her beach house. Michael scanned the document, his face growing increasingly pale. "Is this true?" he asked Amanda, his voice barely audible. "They're lying," Amanda insisted, though her panicked expression told a different story. "They're just trying to come between us, Michael. Don't you see?" As Michael continued reading the report, I noticed his hands begin to tremble. There were copies of social media posts, text messages, and financial records detailing a pattern of behavior that was undeniable. The woman he had married was not who she pretended to be. While Michael was absorbed in the documentation, William's phone buzzed with a text message. He checked it, and then looked up with grim satisfaction. "That was Patricia Johnson from your work, Michael. She and 2 other guests from the wedding have contacted us after hearing about the police report. They want to provide witness statements about the assault." Michael looked up from the report, devastation written across his face. Why, he asked Amanda the single word containing a universe of betrayal. Amanda's strategy shifted instantly, tears filling her eyes as she grabbed Michael's hands. "Baby, they're twisting everything. I love you. You know I love you. Your mother just doesn't want us to be happy." For a moment I feared Michael might fall for her manipulation again, might choose to believe the fantasy over the harsh reality before him, but something had finally broken through. Perhaps it was the cumulative evidence, or perhaps it was simply that he could no longer ignore what was right in front of him. "You hit my mother," he said, slowly pulling his hands from hers. "You lied about her promising us the apartment. You've been lying about everything, haven't you?" Amanda's tears vanished as quickly as they had appeared. Her expression hardened into something cold and calculating. "You'll regret this, Michael. All of you will. I'm entitled to half of everything now, and I'll make sure this drags out for years." She snatched up her portfolio of renovation, plans, her movements jerky with rage. "My father's lawyers will destroy you," she threatened, looking from Michael to me and William. "You think you've won, but this is just the beginning." With that final threat, she stormed toward the door, pausing with her hand on the knob to deliver one last barb. "I never loved you anyway, Michael. You were just a meal ticket with a convenient apartment in the wings." The door slammed behind her, leaving the 3 of us in a stunned silence that seemed to stretch endlessly. Michael stood motionless. The investigator's report still clutched in his hand, his expression one of complete devastation. "Mom," he finally whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see. I didn't want to see." I opened my arms and my son collapsed into them like he had as a child after a nightmare. As he sobbed against my shoulder, the anger I had felt began to melt into something more complex. Relief, sadness, and a cautious hope that perhaps, despite everything, our relationship could be salvaged. The days following Amanda's dramatic exit were a blur of legal consultations, tearful conversations, and slow, painful reconciliation. Michael moved into my guest room, temporarily unable to face returning to the apartment he had shared with Amanda. I watched my son grapple with the devastating realization that his marriage had been built on lies, that the woman he thought he loved had seen him as nothing more than a means to financial gain. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he repeated often, his eyes haunted with guilt. "I should have protected you. I should have seen what she was doing." The first week was the hardest. Michael alternated between profound remorse and flashes of defensiveness, still struggling to fully accept how thoroughly he had been manipulated. There were moments when he questioned whether we were exaggerating Amanda's behavior, whether there might still be a way to salvage his marriage. Each time, William would patiently walk him through the evidence again, helping him see the pattern that had been invisible when he was in love. Amanda wasted no time in making good on her threats. Her father's high-powered attorneys filed challenges to the prenuptial agreement Michael had insisted on, claiming it was signed under duress. They demanded temporary spousal support in amounts that would have financially crippled my son. William connected us with his former colleague, a family law specialist named Eleanor, who took on Michael's case with quiet determination. "She's trying to punish you," Eleanor explained during one of our strategy sessions. "The best response is to remain calm and let the legal process work. The evidence of her true intentions is substantial." The assault charges against Amanda proceeded as well. Detective Martinez informed us that the district attorney had decided to pursue the case, especially after multiple wedding guests came forward as witnesses. Patricia from Michael's work and several others provided detailed statements describing what they had seen at the reception. "You have more support than you realize," Rochelle Detective Martinez told me during a follow-up interview. "People were appalled by her behavior. No one thinks this is just a family squabble." Michael and I began attending family therapy sessions with Dr. Brennan, a compassionate therapist who specialized in family trauma. In those weekly meetings, we slowly began rebuilding the trust that had been damaged. "I felt like I was losing you," I admitted, during one particularly emotional session, like she was erasing our relationship bit by bit. Michael nodded, tears in his eyes. "I think that's what she wanted. She isolated me from everyone who could have helped me see the truth. She made me believe I was choosing her over everyone else, when really she was manipulating me into abandoning the people who truly cared about me." Dr. Brennan helped us understand the tactics Amanda had used, classic manipulation techniques designed to isolate Michael and make him dependent on her approval. We learned about love bombing, gaslighting, and the slow erosion of boundaries that had made it possible for her to convince him that taking my home was somehow reasonable. The most painful sessions were those where Michael confronted the red flags he had ignored, the warning signs that had been present from the beginning. "She always talked about money, about status," he realized. "Every gift I gave her was evaluated by its price tag. If it wasn't expensive enough, she would seem disappointed. She kept pushing me to spend more than I could afford, saying I deserved the best, but it wasn't about me deserving things, it was about her wanting them." As Michael worked through his grief and betrayal, I focused on my own healing process. Susan suggested a support group for family members affected by manipulative relationships, and there I found understanding from others who had watched loved ones fall under the spell of narcissistic partners. I blamed myself for not doing more to open his eyes. I shared during one meeting. I saw the signs but stayed silent because I was afraid of losing him. An older man named Robert, whose daughter had been in an abusive relationship, shook his head gently. "They have to see it for themselves. If you had pushed harder, she would have used that to drive him further away from you. You did the right thing by being there when the truth finally came out." The wisdom in that room helped me forgive myself and Michael, understanding that we had both been victims of Amanda's skilled manipulation, albeit in different ways. Friends rallied around us as news of what had happened spread through our circle. Susan brought homemade meals, insisting that neither Michael nor I needed to worry about cooking while dealing with everything else. My former teaching colleagues organized a schedule to check in on me, making sure I wasn't alone for too long with my thoughts. Michael's work friends, particularly Patricia and her husband, invited him for dinners and outings, refusing to let him isolate himself in shame. 3 months after the wedding, the district attorney offered Amanda a plea deal on the assault charges. Rather than risk a trial where multiple witnesses would testify against her, she accepted community service and mandatory anger management classes. The plea included a restraining order that prevented her from coming near me or my apartment. The divorce proceedings took longer, with Amanda fighting every step of the way. Her attempts to challenge the prenuptial agreement ultimately failed when her own text messages to friends revealed she had been plotting to acquire my apartment from the early days of their relationship. 6 months after the wedding day disaster, the marriage was annulled based on evidence of Amanda's fraudulent intentions. "I never thought I'd be divorced at 29, Michael said the evening after the final court hearing, much less from a marriage that lasted less than a day." We were sitting in my living room, the same space where Amanda had once unfolded her renovation plans, now reclaimed as our sanctuary. I reached over to squeeze his hand. "You've handled it with dignity, Michael. I'm proud of you for finding the strength to face the truth and move forward." He smiled, the expression reaching his eyes in a way I hadn't seen since before Amanda. "I'm moving into that apartment in Brooklyn next week," he told me. "It's time I stand on my own 2 feet again." but I'll still come for Sunday dinners if that's okay." "I'd be devastated if you didn't," I assured him, feeling both sadness at his leaving and pride in his recovery. As spring turned to summer, life began to settle into new patterns. Michael threw himself into his work, earning a promotion that helped rebuild his self-confidence. I joined a community garden, finding peace in nurturing growing things and connecting with neighbors I had barely known before. William visited more frequently from Boston, our relationship strengthened by the crisis we had weathered together. Nearly a year after the wedding day confrontation, I made a decision that surprised even me. I contacted a real estate agent about potentially downsizing, not because anyone was pressuring me, but because I was ready to consider what might come next in my life. "I'm not saying I'll definitely move," I explained to Michael over dinner, "but this place is big for just me, and there are wonderful memories here, but also some difficult ones now." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "It should be your choice, Mom, no one else's." "That's exactly right," I agreed. "My choice on my timeline." As summer progressed, Michael mentioned that he had been spending time with Patricia's sister Jennifer, who had recently moved to the city. She was a kindergarten teacher with a warm laugh and no interest in status symbols. When he finally brought her to Sunday dinner, I was struck by her genuine interest in my teaching stories and the respectful way she engaged with both Michael and me. "I'm not rushing into anything, Mom," he assured me later. "We're just friends getting to know each other slowly." "She seems lovely," I told him honestly, seeing how his face brightened at her mention. "True family stands by you when others try to take what's yours, whether it's your home, your dignity, or your sense of self-worth." Frank and I had taught Michael that lesson throughout his childhood, and though Amanda had temporarily made him forget it, the truth had ultimately prevailed. As I watched my son rebuilding his life with wisdom earned through pain, I felt profound gratitude for the genuine relationships that had sustained us through our darkest moments. The future stretched before us, uncertain, but full of possibility. I might choose to downsize someday to give Michael part of his inheritance while I could still enjoy seeing him benefit from it. But it would be a gift freely given, not something taken through manipulation or force. The apartment that Amanda had coveted remained mine, filled with memories both painful and precious, a symbol of resilience rather than defeat. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have pressed charges against Amanda or tried to handle things privately? Have you ever had to stand up to someone who was trying to take advantage of you or someone you love? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply say no to those who try to take what's rightfully yours.